In Warhammer 40,000, death is not always the worst punishment the Imperium can give. Sometimes, the body is kept alive after the person inside it has been erased. That is the horror of becoming a servitor. A servitor is a human being turned into a living machine. Criminals, heretics, failed workers, debtors, prisoners, and sometimes completely innocent people can be taken, modified, and stripped of their identity. Their memories are removed, their will is destroyed. Their body is cut apart and rebuilt with metal, wires, tools, weapons, or machinery. What remains can still breathe, walk, carry, fight, clean, build, or obey, but it is no longer truly a person. The most disturbing part is how normal servitors are in the Imperium. They are not rare horrors hidden in secret prisons. They are everywhere. They open doors. They carry ammunition. They process data. They repair machines. They march into battle. They stand silently in corridors, plugged into walls, waiting for orders from people who no longer think of them as human. To most Imperial citizens, this is not cruelty. It is efficiency. A condemned man can still serve the Emperor. A broken worker can still be useful. A body that would otherwise be wasted can become property of the state, the Mechanicus, or the military. The Imperium does not throw away flesh, if flesh can still be turned into labor. Some servitors are barely aware of anything. Their minds are reduced to simple commands. Move, lift, fire, guard, repeat. They perform the same task for years, maybe centuries, until their bodies rot, their implants fail, or someone replaces them with another unfortunate soul. But the true nightmare is the possibility that not every part of the person is gone. Some stories suggest that fragments can remain. A feeling, a memory, a moment of fear buried under layers of programming. A trapped awareness unable to speak, unable to resist, forced to watch its own body obey commands forever. If even a small piece of the original mind survives, then servitorization is not just execution, it is imprisonment inside your own corpse. Imagine waking only in flashes, a face you almost remember, a pain you cannot understand, a command you cannot refuse. Your arms are no longer yours, your voice is gone, your thoughts collapse before they become words. You try to ask what happened, but your mouth has been replaced by a speaker that only repeats machine code. That is why becoming a servitor is one of the worst fates in Warhammer 40,000. It removes the dignity of death and replaces it with endless usefulness. The Imperium does not need to hate you. It does not need to torture you for revenge. It only needs to decide that you are more valuable as a tool than as a person. And once that decision is made, your name, memories, guilt, innocence, dreams, and soul no longer matter. Only the function remains. Becoming a Chaos Spawn is one of the most horrifying fates in Warhammer 40,000 because it is not simply death, mutation, or madness. It is what happens when the powers of chaos touch a mortal too deeply and leave nothing human behind. Many who serve chaos believe they are walking a path to greatness. They think the gods will reward them with strength, immortality, forbidden knowledge, or demonhood. A warrior might dedicate every kill to Khorne. A sorcerer might bargain with Tzeentch for impossible power. A plague cultist might surrender his body to Nurgle. A hedonist might offer every sensation to Slaanesh. Each one believes that devotion will make them chosen. Sometimes it does, but sometimes the gods give too much. A Chaos Spawn is what remains when gifts become a curse. The body mutates beyond control. Bones twist into shapes that cannot support life, but somehow still move. Skin splits open. Eyes grow where they should not. Arms become claws, tentacles, blades, mouths, or useless masses of flesh. The mind collapses beneath the weight of warp corruption, until the person who once existed is drowned inside instinct, hunger, pain, and madness. The worst part is that this can happen to the faithful. A Chaos worshipper can spend years killing, praying, sacrificing, and believing they are rising toward glory, only to be rewarded with a body that turns against itself. To the Chaos gods, this is not necessarily a mistake. It is entertainment, punishment, excess, or simply another form of blessing. Mortals are not partners to chaos, they are material. A warrior who once commanded armies can become a screaming beast chained in the hold of a warship. A sorcerer who thought he understood the warp can become a mass of eyes and mouths crawling across the floor. A champion who believed he was close to demonhood can lose his name, his memories, and his purpose in a single moment of mutation. Unlike a servitor, a chaos spawn is not useful in a clean, controlled way. It is a living disaster. Chaos warbands may drive them into battle like animals, using them as shock troops against enemies. They are unleashed, pointed toward a target, and allowed to tear through anything in their path. They do not fight with honor or strategy. They attack because the broken thing inside them knows only rage and hunger. There may still be fragments of the person inside. That is what makes the fate even worse. Somewhere inside the monster, there might be a memory of command, ambition, love, pride, or fear. But none of it can rise to the surface. The mouth cannot form the old name. The mind cannot hold a thought long enough to beg. The body has become a prison made of mutation. Chaos promises freedom from the weakness of mortal life, but a spawn is proof of the lie. It is freedom from humanity, freedom from reason, freedom from identity, and freedom from any future except violence. The gods do not need to kill you when they can turn your soul's ambition into a joke made of flesh. That is why turning into a chaos spawn is worse than death. Death ends the story. Spawnhood continues it after the person is gone, dragging what remains of them across battlefields as a reminder that chaos does not love its servants. It consumes them, reshapes them, and laughs when they still call it a blessing. Being captured by the Drukhari is one of the worst fates in Warhammer 40,000 because they do not want to kill you quickly. Death is too simple. Too wasteful. To the Drukhari, pain is not only entertainment, it is survival. The Drukhari live in Comora, the dark city hidden inside the webway. They are descendants of the Eldar who escaped the fall, but they did not escape its curse. Slaanesh still hungers for their souls, slowly draining them over time. To delay that fate, the Drukhari feed on suffering. The pain of others restores them, strengthens them, and keeps the soul thirst at bay. That means a prisoner is not just a victim, a prisoner is fuel. When Drukhari raiders attack an Imperial world, they do not come like a normal army. They strike fast, silently, and without warning. One moment a city is sleeping, the next its streets are full of screaming civilians, poisoned blades, splinter fire, shadowed aircraft, and figures moving too quickly to understand. The Drukhari do not need to conquer the planet, they only need to take enough people back alive. For the captured, the nightmare begins after the raid ends. A prisoner taken to Comora enters a place built from cruelty. There are arenas where victims are forced to fight for the amusement of nobles. There are laboratories where homunculi reshape flesh like artists working with clay. There are torture chambers where pain is stretched for as long as possible, not because the victim knows anything useful, but because suffering itself has value. The homunculi are perhaps the most terrifying part of this fate. They are masters of fleshcraft, ancient beings who can cut, rebuild, preserve, and mutate bodies with impossible skill. They can keep a victim alive through injuries that should kill instantly. They can remove limbs, replace organs, alter nerves, and turn a person into something that still feels everything. A Drukhari prisoner might pray for death, but death may not be allowed. Their captors can extend life far beyond natural limits. A person can be broken, repaired, broken again, and displayed as a living sculpture. Their pain can become art. Their fear can become a gift at a noble's feast. Their body can become a tool, a pet, a weapon, or a joke. And, unlike servitorization, the mind may remain painfully intact. The victim understands what is happening. They remember who they were. They know they had a home, a name, a family, a world. That memory makes the suffering richer for their captors. The Drukhari do not want empty flesh. They want awareness. They want terror that understands itself. That is why being captured by the Drukhari is worse than simple execution. An orc may kill you in battle. A tyrannid may consume you. A bolter shell may end you in an instant. But the Drukhari can turn your survival into the punishment. They can make every second feel endless, then make sure there are more seconds to come. In the grim darkness of the far future, many enemies hate mankind. The Drukhari are worse, because hatred is not required. To them, your agony is not personal. It is culture, pleasure, medicine, and currency. You do not suffer because you mattered. You suffer because they can use you. Falling to the Black Rage is one of the most tragic fates in Warhammer 40,000, because it does not turn a warrior into a coward, a traitor, or a monster in the usual sense. It turns him into the memory of someone else's death. The Blood Angels and their successor chapters carry the gene seed of Sanguinius, one of the noblest Primarchs ever created. He was beautiful, angelic, loyal, and doomed. During the final battle of the Horus Heresy, Sanguinius faced Horus aboard the Vengeful Spirit and was killed. His death was so powerful, so spiritually violent, that it left a scar inside his sons forever. That scar is the Black Rage. A Blood Angel who falls to it no longer sees the battlefield around him clearly. The present breaks apart. His brothers become shadows. The enemy in front of him becomes Horus. The ground beneath his feet becomes the deck of the War Master's flagship. He is no longer himself. In his mind, he is Sanguinius in his final moments, fighting the traitor who murdered the future of mankind. At first, it might sound almost heroic. A space marine overcome with the fury of his Primarch, charging into battle without fear, filled with impossible strength and hatred. And in battle, those lost to the Black Rage can be terrifying. They fight with savage power, ignoring wounds, pain, and reason. They can tear through enemies that would break ordinary warriors. But the tragedy is that they are already lost. A warrior who falls to the Black Rage almost never returns to normal life. His identity is buried beneath visions of Sanguinius's death. He may scream at enemies who are not there. He may call his brothers by names from the heresy. He may believe every battle is the final duel aboard the Vengeful Spirit. His own life becomes trapped inside a moment that happened 10,000 years ago. The Blood Angels do not simply execute these warriors. They gather them into the Death Company, painting their armor black and sending them into the most hopeless battles. It is both mercy and weaponization. The fallen are given one last chance to die with purpose, to spend their madness against the enemies of the Imperium before the curse consumes them completely. But that does not make the fate less horrifying. Imagine being a warrior who has survived centuries of war, only to feel your mind begin to crack. You know the curse is coming. You know what it means. You see flashes of wings, blood, darkness, and Horus's face. Your brothers look at you with pity because they understand you are not merely angry. You are disappearing. The Black Rage steals the future. It steals brotherhood. It steals memory. It takes a loyal son of Sanguinius and locks him inside the worst moment his bloodline ever suffered. He does not fall because he failed in duty. He falls because he inherited a wound that never healed. That is why the Black Rage is worse than death. Death would end the pain. The Black Rage forces a warrior to live another man's final nightmare until he dies screaming for vengeance against a ghost. Being trapped on the Golden Throne is one of the worst fates in Warhammer 40,000, because it is not simply suffering, sacrifice, or imprisonment. It is all of them stretched across 10,000 years. The Emperor of Mankind did not die after his final battle with Horus. That was the tragedy. His body was broken beyond recovery, his dream was destroyed, and his sons were scattered or dead. But some part of him remained alive. He was placed upon the Golden Throne, the ancient machine at the heart of the Imperial Palace, where his psychic power could continue guiding humanity through the darkness. To the Imperium, the Golden Throne is holy. It is the center of mankind's faith, the seat of the God Emperor, and the reason the Astronomicon still burns across the warp. Without that light, Imperial ships would struggle to travel between stars. Worlds would be isolated. The Imperium would fracture even faster than it already has. But from another angle, the Golden Throne is a prison. The Emperor cannot rise from it. He cannot speak to mankind in any normal way. He cannot walk among his people, correct the empire built in his name, or explain the truth behind his plans. His body is a corpse that refuses to finish dying, sustained by machinery, ritual, sacrifice, and psychic force. He is worshipped by trillions, yet trapped in silence while they misunderstand almost everything he tried to build. Every day, countless psychers are sacrificed to sustain the system around him. The Imperium feeds human lives into the machinery of survival, because if the throne fails, Terra itself could be lost, and the Astronomicon could go dark. The Emperor's continued existence has become the foundation of an empire that survives by burning its own people as fuel. That is what makes this fate so horrifying. The Emperor won the final duel, but the victory left him unable to live, unable to die, and unable to stop the nightmare that followed. The Imperium became a religious empire, exactly the kind of superstition he had once tried to destroy. His name became a weapon used by fanatics, inquisitors, tyrants, and priests. And he can only endure. For 10,000 years he has remained on the throne while the galaxy decays. Primarchs vanish, chapters die, worlds burn. Chaos grows stronger. The Great Rift tears reality apart. Humanity screams prayers to him, but those prayers do not free him. They only make the cage more sacred. Being trapped on the Golden Throne is worse than death, because death would have ended the Emperor's burden. Instead, he became the Imperium's last support pillar, forced to hold up a civilization that is rotting around him. He is not remembered as a man with a plan. He is worshipped as a god in a tomb. The Emperor saved humanity from immediate destruction, but the price was eternal stillness. No rest, no freedom, no real victory. Only endless pain, endless duty, and a throne that keeps him alive because mankind is too terrified to let him die. Necron biotransference is one of the worst fates in Warhammer 40,000 because it was sold as salvation. The Necrontyr were not offered death, punishment, or defeat. They were offered freedom from weakness, freedom from disease, freedom from short, painful lives beneath a dying star. For the Necrontyr, mortality was not an abstract fear. It defined their entire civilization. Their bodies were fragile. Their lives were brief. Their dynasties rose and fell under the shadow of sickness and radiation. Even when they built a vast empire among the stars, they could not escape the curse of their own flesh. Then came the Catan. The star gods promised the Necrontyr what they had always wanted: immortality. The process was called biotransference. Entire populations were led into colossal furnaces, believing they would emerge perfected. Their organic bodies would be replaced with living metal. Their suffering would end. Their species would no longer rot, weaken, or die. But the promise was a trap. When the Necrontyr entered the furnaces, their bodies were destroyed, and their minds were transferred into mechanical shells. They did become immortal. They did become stronger. They did become almost impossible to kill. But something essential was stolen during the process. Their souls were consumed by the Catan. The Necrontyr emerged as the Necrons. For the nobles, fragments of personality survived. Some still remembered their names, rivalries, pride, and ancient grudges. They could speak, command, scheme, and hate. But even they were changed. Their emotions became cold echoes of what they once were. Their immortality was not life. It was memory trapped inside metal. For the common people, the fate was even worse. Most became warriors with almost no personality left. Farmers, workers, artisans, children, soldiers, servants. Entire populations were reduced to silent metal bodies obeying commands they could no longer question. Their civilization survived, but its people did not. That is the deepest horror of biotransference. It did not destroy the Necrontyr Empire. It preserved the shape of it after removing the soul. The armies remained. The dynasties remained. The kings remained. The tombs remained. But the living species that had once wanted salvation was gone. Imagine waking in a body that cannot breathe, cannot feel warmth, cannot taste food, cannot touch another person with living hands. You do not age, you do not sleep, you do not die. but you also do not truly live. Your memories are damaged, your emotions are distant, and your body is a weapon you never asked to become. Some Necron nobles understand what was lost. That makes their immortality even more cruel. They remember enough to know they were betrayed, but not enough to become whole again. They won the war against death and discovered that death might have been kinder. Biotransference is worse than death because it turned an entire species into a monument to its own mistake. The Necron tier wanted eternity. The Catan gave it to them in the most horrifying way possible. Endless existence without the souls that made existence worth having. Becoming a poxwalker is one of the worst fates in Warhammer 40,000 because the victim does not simply die from disease. The disease keeps them moving after death has already claimed everything that made them human. Poxwalkers are created by the plagues of Nurgle, the chaos god of decay, rot, and diseased endurance. They are not ordinary zombies in the simple sense. They are plague-ridden bodies twisted by warp corruption, swollen with infection, covered in boils, mutations, horns, leaking wounds, and impossible growths. Their bodies should collapse, their organs should fail, their minds should be gone. But Nurgle's power keeps them moving. The infection often begins as sickness. A worker coughs blood, a soldier develops fever, a hive citizen notices strange sores spreading across his skin. At first, there may still be fear, then confusion, then pain. The body changes, but the victim may not fully understand what is happening. The plague does not simply kill them quickly. It transforms them into a carrier, a weapon, and a symbol of Nurgle's gift. The most horrifying part is that poxwalkers can still laugh. Their bodies stagger forward in crowds, moaning, giggling, chanting, or smiling through ruined faces. The joy is not truly theirs. It is the unnatural blessing of Nurgle, forcing misery to wear the mask of happiness. A person can be rotting alive, losing their mind, spreading infection to everyone around them, and still appear almost grateful. That is what makes this fate so grotesque. Pain becomes worship, decay becomes comfort, the body becomes a garden of disease. The victim is no longer allowed to recognize their own horror. Nurgle does not always torture his followers with pure agony. Sometimes he takes away the ability to care that they are suffering. A poxwalker horde is terrifying because every individual inside it was once someone. A factory worker, a soldier, a prisoner, a child of a hive city, a pilgrim. A loyal servant of the Emperor who prayed for protection and received corruption instead. Now they walk together in a mass of infected bodies, spreading plague with every step. For defenders, fighting poxwalkers is also a nightmare. Killing them means cutting down the remains of civilians, comrades, or fellow Imperial citizens. Letting them approach means infection, panic, and death. Even after they are destroyed, their bodies remain dangerous, leaking filth and disease into the battlefield. Becoming a poxwalker is worse than death because it steals both dignity and awareness. The victim becomes a corpse that does not rest, a plague that walks, a joke told by a god of rot. They may not even understand that they have lost everything. Their last human thoughts are buried beneath fever, laughter, and the wet sound of their own body falling apart. In the Imperium, death can be martyrdom, but becoming a poxwalker turns a human being into contamination. Not remembered, not honored, not mourned properly, only burned, purged, and feared by the people they once belonged to. Being consumed by the Tyranids is one of the worst fates in Warhammer 40,000 because it does not end with your death. It ends with everything you are becoming fuel for something that feels nothing. The Tyranids do not hate their victims. They do not conquer for pride, territory, revenge, or faith. They are hunger given the shape of an army. When a hive fleet reaches a world, every living thing on that planet becomes biomass. Humans, animals, forests, oceans, crops, bacteria. Nothing is sacred. Nothing is spared, and nothing is remembered. For a soldier facing the Tyranids, the horror begins before the swarm even reaches the walls. The skies darken with spores, Communications fail. Strange organisms poison the air. The ground starts to move with things burrowing beneath it. Then the first waves arrive, and they do not stop. Gaunts, warriors, monsters, living artillery, winged predators, and biotitans all move under the will of the hive mind. Death in battle may be quick. A claw through the chest, a body torn apart, acid melting armor and flesh. But for many victims, the end is slower. They are dragged away by feeder organisms, dissolved in digestion pools, or broken down inside the planet-wide machinery of consumption. Their flesh becomes nutrient matter. Their bones, blood, organs, and memories of life are reduced to raw material. The Tyranids do not waste anything. After the defenders are dead, the planet itself is harvested. Oceans are drained, atmospheres are processed, soil is stripped. Cities become empty shells, forests vanish. Bodies are pulled into capillary towers and lifted into the hive ships above. What was once a world becomes a dry, dead rock drifting in silence. That is the true terror of being consumed by the Tyranids. There is no grave, no martyrdom, no monument, no story carried forward by survivors. You do not become a fallen hero, a damned soul, or even a prisoner. You become part of the swarm's next attack. Your body might help grow another gaunt. Your genetic material might be studied and used to create a better killer. Your planet's biomass might fuel the fleet as it travels toward the next world. Everything your civilization built, everything your species protected, everything you thought mattered, becomes nourishment for a hunger that has already forgotten you. Even worse, some Tyranid organisms can absorb information from their prey. The hive mind learns. Every battle teaches it. Every weapon used against it becomes data. Every defense that slows it down may help the next swarm adapt. Resistance is necessary, but resistance also feeds the enemy's understanding. That is why this fate is worse than death. Death ends a person. Tyranid consumption erases the meaning around that death. It turns life into material, worlds into meals, and civilizations into nothing but energy for the next invasion. In Warhammer 40,000, many enemies want to rule you, corrupt you, torture you, or enslave you. The Tyranids are worse in a colder way. They do not care who you were. They do not care what you believed. They only care that you are alive and therefore useful to eat.